Well, Gene, it's great to have you.
Thank
Thanks for
you.
coming in.
Thank you.
And before we get started, well, after we get started, I just wonder. I feel like in this interview, I'm going to disabuse people of some of their notions about you because you are a very, very nice person and very easy to work with. Once that gets out there, isn't that going to be a problem for you?
Yes, that's a big problem. I revel in, well, look, somebody's got to be Darth Vader in Star Wars. Otherwise, it's just pablum.
You were, and I'm not just, we're friends enough to that I don't have to shine your apple, but working with you, it was absolutely seamless. I kept looking for problems to happen, and nothing ever happened. So whatever image you've cultivated, it's not working with me, and now the whole world knows.
I hate you.
Well, one of the reasons that I wanted to talk to you today was we have so much to talk about, and you've done so many interviews over the course of your life and more recently, but you are now moving into movies. You and I worked on a movie together, but you are now producing movies, and I want to let's start with that. What is getting you into producing movies?
Well, it's not the first time. I was co-producer or producer on a few things. A movie called Detroit Rock City that was at New Line. It was kind of a Wizard of Oz meets Kiss on the yellow brick road off to Detroit Rock City to see their favorite band. Did pretty good. And I then got too busy with the band because we were consistently and constantly, which are two words that sound alike, but they're not the same thing, touring. And then along the way, created a few TV shows. My Dad, the Rock Star, was a cartoon show. I was the creator and exec producer, and we had a reality show actually called Gene Simmons Family Jewels, which lasted 8 seasons and 167 episodes. And a few other shows, Mr. Romance on Oxygen, and a few other things. And then started a short lived production banner called Erebus Pictures. We put out one film um, and action thriller and so on with Wesley Snipes, who was good guy. And then without putting in a penny or anything, because I don't believe in using my own money, but I do believe in sweat equity. I
Hmm.
don't like the term executive producer or producer that sits on the sidelines, sends a check, and then does nothing
Right.
because he wants to put his girlfriend in the movie or just put money in it, and then poof, you're a producer. And I believe in rolling up your sleeves
Yeah.
and developing a script, and it takes a lot of time to kind of liaise with creative people and sort of put the pieces together because it's cool, and development is a constantly moving process, and you've got lawyers involved and agents. So
Yep.
there's a guy named Hamilton, and he and I teamed up, and we have the Simmons Hamilton film venture, and the first one is called Deep Water, and it's got West Aaron Van Dyne, Sir Ben Kingsley. The director is uh, really well known, who's done action films, including Die Hard and all that stuff.
Rennie Harlan.
That's right.
Hmm.
And I was going to mention his name. And then sometimes, people say they don't know much about film, but Rennie's a class A guy.
Hmm.
So,
And then you have one more. There's one more.
yeah, there's another one with Mel Gibson and a very fine actress, and you'll hear about her because most people know about her only through her modeling and all that. And that's called The Canyon. That's coming out afterwards. But for me, this is not, when they say labor of love, there ain't much labor involved because I'm blessed that I don't depend on movies or the restaurant chain or any of my other ventures on paying the rent. I'm
Hmm.
the biggest guy on the face of the planet. So I get involved in things that I love, that I'm interested in, and I know I'm blessed. You know, very few people have that choice.
Yeah.
Just do what you sort of like because you like to do it, not because you have to buy a loaf of bread with your hard-earned money. So I'm a very lucky guy.
Now, of course, you've done TV shows and films before, but this is a sort of a major step for you, I think, right? This is a big deal.
No, I don't look at it as a big deal. I look at it as something I enjoy doing. I've always been a film fan. In fact, I learned how to speak English through movies and television because I heard different things on the street. You know, hey, Charlie, you're going to the club today. Hey, man, like, what do you? My brother Bob. You know, the different sounds of the English language as respectfully spoken by its various citizens. And when I came to America, I noticed that the people who did the newscast spoke in that American sort of mid-Atlantic
Hmm.
sound, and those were the best dressed, the most respected, you know, sort of people.
Right.
I wanted to be that. I didn't want to talk or come off like the person next door on the street.
Right.
Dress like your boss, hang out with your boss, hang out with people who are better looking, or oh, the lights went out.
No,
Can you?
I can still see you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Hang out with better looking people, people who earn more money, and on and on and on. Be upward.
Right.
Don't, as they say on the street, get down. I don't want to get down. I want to get up. So if you're talking about, the real stuff of life, which is we all go to work, you're lucky. You're in a very small percentage of the population of the planet who talk about passion. It's my this, it's my that. No, the vast majority of people, almost everybody, goes to work for one thing: to make money, to be able to feed their families and put a roof over your head. That's why
Hmm.
you go to work. The idea that you have to love your job is lunacy.
Right.
So the few of us, and that includes you, because you're so hideously rich and famous and all that, you do things that you love. So there are very few of us on the planet, but I don't kid myself. The way I can make the easiest money, if that's all that interests me, is I've got a side band called Gene Simmons Band. Well, as a matter of fact, we're going back out on tour because it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I want to get into that. So yeah, let's segue to that then. The tour is coming up.
Yeah.
What's it going to be like? What can people expect? And where are you going?
Across North America, we're doing about 2 or 3 months, starting off in Anaheim, but ignoring New York City and LA, going to the heartland. And people, by the way, if you're interested, go to genesimmons.com or the various places where you can buy tickets and find out all the dates. But this is decidedly a more fun, more informal uh, gathering, a big party than KISS events, which are, spectacles. This is more, there's no road manager. It's like rock and roll gypsies out there. I bring my guitar pick, and that's it. No trucks, no roadies, no nothing. The local
Mm.
promoter rents all the amplifiers, the screens, the sound system, and everything. We just show up and have a great time. So it gives me and my killer backup band a chance to dig into chestnuts, do your favorite Kiss songs, but also obscure stuff, and even do stuff that has never been recorded before, as well as doing covers of some of my favorite songs, which maybe somebody hasn't heard yet. But the most fun is kind of putting on the house lights and having the back and forth with the fans who show up. And you, Mr. Joseph, if you can sing or hum or strum a guitar or play drums or whatever, I pull you up on stage and we jam, we get together.
Man, I'm not going to your show then.
You don't have to sing all that well, actually.
Well, does it remind you of the early days when you're starting out? Is that what I'm sensing a lot of fun and excitement in your voice. Is that
Yeah.
what it's reminding you of?
If you take a look at the first generation of rockers,
Right.
Chuck Berry would take his guitar. He didn't even
Right.
have a backup band.
Right.
And he would go to various shows and he would talk to the local backup band and say, these are the songs we're doing, study my records. And they don't even rehearse. He gets up on stage and they're off.
Right.
So much more informal, more fun, more party, and less show, if you see.
Right.
So it's a chance to really engage with the fans. And by the way, in the middle of the show, if somebody throws up a question or wants to say something, we turn on the house lights and say, what did you say? It kind of involves the fans much more than on being on stage and showing off, because that's what a show is.
Well, this sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, it really is.
That sounds like a lot of fun. By the way, as long as you're peeling back the curtain on Gene Simmons, I want to also talk about your family. I haven't met Sophie, it's Sophie, right? But I have met Nick, and a more well-behaved, kind, gentle human being I've rarely met. So take us behind the scenes, because I don't know what people expect, but they don't expect that. And also, if I were in the Gene Simmons family, what would I have to do to not be disinherited?
You hit it on the head, which is because we're blessed and because both Nick and Sophie are lucky to have been born for Shannon and I, because there's a safety net, and that's called money. But you had no free rides. Your job, first and foremost, is to be kind. Um, no drugs, no alcohol, no smoking. It's not allowed. If I catch you putting tattoos on your body or piercings on your body or going off and having a wild weekend without discussing it with myself and Shannon, you're done.
Done.
You're done. You can go out and start washing dishes and work your way up the American dream the hard way. But because you have access to, I mean, they've got their own homes and cars and all this stuff, but we never gave them, and I never gave them an allowance. Hey, Dad, I love you. Can I have $20? No. But you see those dishes over there? You go wash them, then mow the lawn and do all this stuff, and here's $1. You got to make your kids understand the value of it, because the idea of an allowance is lunacy. Because when the kids grow up after they're 18 and so on, they have their handout. Where's my weekly money from somebody?
Right.
That's spelled entitled. There's an entire generation who feel, oh, it's my right. It's what that don't fly in my household.
And I'm guessing you saw a lot of that in Beverly Hills.
Oh, sure. It's the land of lunacy, because you've got celebrity and good looks. Generally, it's a better looking girls, especially, who don't want to get wrinkles because it's too cold and stuff. They come to the land of sunshine and so on, and money.
Right.
So there's a lot of it's shark infested waters.
Yeah.
And you cannot judge the book by the cover. You see a pretty girl with the right makeup and the thing, and she's shaped well and all this kind of stuff. You don't know what's going to come out of her mouth, but especially you don't know what she's planning for her life. Is she studying coding with computers and AI and stuff? Maybe, or maybe not. Or maybe she's looking to hook up to somebody who's got the cash to, give her an easy life.
Right.
And in the heartland, you've got to fall in love and not on the first date and so on and so forth. So I'm much more a heartland kind of a guy. Family values. I mean, the nuclear family is dead and gone. I've written a few business books, one of which is called Me Inc. And when you do the research, is horrifically. I mean, it's a bad news. The male of the species in these United States, well, the divorce rates are horrific. If you have skin tones like yours, the divorce rates are about 55% of all marriages and in divorce. And then the damage, the kids and everything. And then unfortunately, if you're Hispanic, it goes up to about 65 or more percent. If you're African American, it's horrible for single mothers. Something like 75% or more of all households in the African American community, um, the support system is the single mother, whether she's married or not. She has to earn a living. It's just horrific. She has to earn a living and raise those children by herself because the male of the species simply, after having the kids, gets up and walks out. It's
Yep.
just awful. So men do not have a good track record. And
Right.
in my estimation, most of the problems of crime and drugs and everything, there's no father figure at home.
By the way, I think you also have a very, very dim view of alcohol. Share that with our listeners and viewers.
I really don't have a problem with alcohol. I have a problem with people drinking alcohol because alcohol has been a mainstay of toasts. And if you go to church, if that's your calling in life, you will have a little sip of something. It's so um, the problem with alcohol, and certainly with alcohol abuse or drugs and drug abuse and even cigarettes, is people get a kind of a pass.
Hmm.
There's a car filled with drunken teenagers and they run over somebody with a missile, really, that's going 100 miles an hour.
Right.
It's made out of metal and stuff and weighs thousands of pounds. And if they kill somebody, hey man, as soon as I hear hey man, I know bullshit is on the way. Hey man, I don't remember. And I was drunk. I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
As if it's some kind of hall pass. But you, asshole, decided to get drunk first. That's a sane decision. From then on, you can't say, hey, I don't remember anything. No, you do remember. You do remember you decided to have more than one drink. So if I was in charge and you killed somebody while you were drunk, I would put you to death.
Right.
What are the repercussions of taking another life?
Yeah.
What about
No.
the mother who lost her child?
Yeah.
So don't put me in charge. Don't make me judge and jury.
Well, all of this kind of reminds me of the Kiss image of the '70s, which is again, some of this conversation is just so different from people expect you to say or to be. And when you were getting those, like, were you actively encouraging, like, when people said, for instance, I grew up in very religious circles. It was like Kiss stands for Kings in Satan's Service. Like, when you heard that stuff, were you just
Who,
laugh? Were you just
who's
laugh? What's that?
I've heard that. I've heard
Were,
that.
were you just
Few decades.
laughing, or were you kind of encouraging it in a fun way, or what? Like, where were you at in those moments?
Well, unfortunately, the worse things they say about you, the cooler it is to
Right.
whatever the audience is. But I was also a theology major, and I will tell you more things than you want to know. So people who, and bright, wonderful people, as an example, who worship Jesus, as well they should. There's some good ideas there. Have no idea about anything other than dictum, other than the rituals and stuff they learn. But I happen to know the details,
But
which
did
is
you have a but did you have a publicist like fanning the flames, or were you just bemused by all that stuff?
well, I react. I give as good as I get. Do not
Right.
judge. Do not judge lest ye be judged. So I remember specifically about 1982, we were playing in one of the southern states, and there was a gentleman dressed in a white outfit with what he thought Jesus might have looked like.
Right.
And he was carrying one of these paper mache crosses on his back and knocking, with his followers on the back, you are damned to hell, and so on. I said, I don't understand. If you're a devout Christian, which comes from the Latin word Christo, which means Messiah or King, because obviously Jesus' last name was not Christ.
Right.
Mom and dad were not Mr. and Mrs. Christ. You don't even know his real name, and you don't know who his mother and father are, the earthly ones, and you have
Right.
no idea what you're talking about. What happened to who are you, by the way, to point fingers at anybody? You are going to be, and you're going to hell. Who are you?
Right.
I thought there was only one judge and jury, and that's called God, in any way, shape, or form. So I had to quote him psalm and verse, and when he didn't know how to answer it, what's Jesus's given earthly name? He didn't have a clue. Well, it was rabbi, which means teacher in Hebrew, which is why in the New Testament often he's referred to as teacher. The literal translation of rabbi. It's not a religious order. And by the way, he was Jewish.
Right.
Not only Jewish, but a rabbi. In other words, well learned, and he was able to read and write, whereas
Right.
the rest of the masses were illiterate. And I said, you don't even know his given earthly name. It happens to be Rabbi Yesu ben Yosef,
Right. Son of
Rabbi
Joseph.
Jesus, the son of Joseph.
Right.
And the reason it's difficult for him to understand that is because he's taught religiously that he's the son of God. So if he's the son of God, how come his given last name is the son of Joseph? I give up, but he quickly turned away with his paper mache crucifix, which was invented by the Romans and not Jews. Why would Jews invent? Because all the original Christians were Jews. Why would they invent a religious symbol that's the sign of death? Think
Right.
about it. Yeah,
Okay,
the Romans did that.
but back to my question, like, did this come out of thin air, or was this something that you were amused by?
No, not
Where,
amused. You have to respect everybody's passion for religion, however it differs from yours.
yeah.
When I came to America at 8.5 years of age with my mother, I never heard of Jesus or Christians or Buddhists or the Baha'i faith or anything. I came to America and was just astonished because where I was born in Haifa, there were no roads and cars going by. It was just dirt roads and donkeys. 1949, when I was a little boy, the infrastructure wasn't there.
Hmm.
And so when we came to America, I have to say, blessed America, I found different people of different skin tones, different religious beliefs, the great melting pot. And I became fascinated by people's beliefs, whether I understood it or not. I wanted to find out more. And then I found the House of God, which is the library where the all the knowledge accumulated by mankind, and I think it's a fair usage of the term mankind, because initially women didn't have power. So everything that was invented, the roads you travel on and the cars that are made and invented by man. Yes, mankind. That's an accurate description. And when I walked into the first library, I was fascinated and stunned that all the knowledge that has been accumulated in history was yours for the taking for free. You could take books home free. And I'm the only person I ever met who actually read the Encyclopedia Britannica from cover to cover, whether I was interested in it or not. So I'm the most boring person you'd want to have at your party because I'll start quoting psalm and verse and the minutia of things because I'm fascinated by knowledge. Knowledge itself is the power source. So you and I had to go through this, unfortunately for you, when we sat down and had dinner.
That was a
I started,
blast. We had 4 hours of great
yeah,
theological conversations. But I want to know, your mother looms large in your life, as does mine. Excuse me.
continues
And
to.
yes, it continues to. I saw a picture of her, by the way. She was beautiful. Where was she in all this? Like, would she call you up and say, "What is this I hear in the news about such and such?" And like, where was she with all when Kiss was in its heyday and the rumor
My
mills are swirling and all that?
my not was in its heyday. Kiss is bigger now than ever. We're
Well, you know
about
what I mean. Like in the '70s, let's just say, when you were just
yes,
900 feet tall,
yeah.
where was she in all
My
that?
mother and father were both born in Hungary. They were born into the Jewish faith. My mother and father went into Israel as it was being born in 1949. I was born 6 months after it became a state. My mother and father divorced when I was about 6 years of age. And my mother, Flora Klein, wanted a better life for me. I'm the only child. And so she had brothers in America who flew my mother and I out to America in 1958. Needless to say, my mother had never seen a refrigerator or a television set, neither about. I did not know. I know it sounds strange. I didn't know there was such a thing as a television set.
Mm.
So when we came to America, my jaws were hanging out because I saw a guy on television with a cape flying through the air, which I couldn't imagine. And I saw monsters, King Kong and everything, bigger than anything I ever imagined. In fact, when my mother and I first walked into her brother George's house, there was one of these huge 6 foot long television slash bar where you could open one side or the other, and there were things. But in the middle, there was a huge television in black and white. And I thought, I know this sounds like a joke, I actually thought there was a little man inside talking to us. So my Uncle George was laughing and opened the side doors. I thought there was a guy laying in there. I'm 8.5 years of age. I couldn't speak English. I'd never heard of anything called television. So everything about America fascinated me. It continues to. And of course, all that stuff was invented here. So as I started meeting different people of different denominations and races and colors and and all this stuff, I wanted to find out what it was all about. And with the library, before cell phones and digital technology, all sources of information was right there in the library. So unlike any of the kids I went to school with, afternoons was spent in the library.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you could watch TV or pick up a newspaper or read any books. So I was the most boring guy taking girls out on dates because I'd start waxing poetic about obscure dinosaurs, which is of course what all girls want to talk about
Right.
on their dates, and their pecking order and the Jurassic period, Dimetrodon and the Triceratops and all that. And they're going, kill me now. Yeah.
Well, I just think you have such a great perspective on America. And I'm also foreign born as you are. My parents were Americans, but I was born in Japan. But I think you and I,
But
you have
people don't know that your Tokyo accent, I can speak a few
Tokyo accent.
phrases in Japanese
I do
that
have a
people,
Tokyo accent. It's
yeah,
true.
I heard.
But you have a love for America, and I think we both do because we saw it from the outside looking and then came in. And I love to hear you riff about America. So talk about your love for America. As an outsider who came in, it was like the promised land for you, right?
It literally was, because even though Israel was and continues to be one of the leaders of all trademarks on the face of the planet, the cell phone technology, as an example, was born in Haifa through Motorola.
Right.
But when I came to America, I was fascinated by the idea that almost anything was possible, that there is such a thing as an American dream. In fact, the phrase is there's no Japanese dream or Russian dream or Afghanistan dream. There's a thing called the American dream where the lowest person in society can reach the heights that no other country can give you. Yes, I know racism and hatred and all the negatives of the human condition, but even in America, you can become African American and become the most powerful person on the planet twice.
Mm-hmm.
You can be elected president twice, whether you agree with the politics or not. So, despite its problems, which are human in nature, the American system of this kind of messy democracy, which, by the way, our founding fathers never talked about, it's not in a piece of paper, it's a republic.
Right.
And the only time there was a direct democracy is in its inception. And then the founding fathers, Franklin and so on, understood that the more populated cities, eventually becoming LA and New York, would dominate because they had a larger population. So they invented the idea of a electoral college, which is to say that the less populated states should also have a voice in government. So people still don't understand why you can win the popular vote and still lose the election.
Right.
No, actually, it makes a lot of sense. Otherwise, every single election would be a Democratic Party would win because LA and New York are blue states. No, no, no. You want to give the voice to America across the board. At any rate, every single asset and facet of America fascinated me because this culture invented the idea of a superhero, not normal people, extraordinary people. Superman and Batman and the Fantastic Four. And by the way, all of the superheroes, almost literally without exception, were invented by Jews, one of the lowest levels of society. Yes, Superman. Yeah, they were invented, created by two Jews that came out of Cleveland. And the Fantastic Four and the Hulk and all that, and created by Stanley Lieber, who invented and created 5,000 of them, which is interesting because this stuff was not created by the highest level, most qualified people, but by the lowest. And if you talk about American music, blues and jazz and even hip hop and all the stuff were created by African Americans who were themselves were the sons and daughters of slaves. So this idea of this American culture, and by the way, the movies, Paramount and and Warner Brothers and all of them, without exception, were owned and created by Jews. There was never such a thing as a movie industry anywhere in the world. These European Jews who still spoke with heavy accents and came from Poland and Russia and stuff, somehow, all without an amazing plan, emigrated to California and wanted to start making movies because of the weather. You could shoot around the year, whereas you couldn't do that in New York or New Jersey, where the first studios were, including Thomas Alva Edison, who started making movies, but because you had to shut down during winter. And the amazing thing about these original Jews who had Paramount and Warner Brothers, they weren't making Jewish movies because nobody would care. The Jewish population of the world was like a popcorn fart. They made Christian movies, King of Kings and so on.
Ben-Hur.
Ben-Hur. And by the way, Ben-Hur, the character, is actually Jewish. The name Ben means son of Hur. He's a Jewish slave who became a gladiator and all that. Is the story of a Jew who went into the Roman system. And so, as was Jesus. So they were not interested in the propaganda of Jewish movies. They were fascinated and wanted to make movies for Christians, which was the dominant population and continues to be in America. So if you study America, it's this idea of even the lowest classes could rise above any of the dominant sort of cultures. And I finally figured out the difference between Europe and America, the cultural differences. And that is that Europe, which created classical music and painting and the Renaissance, which is how it's correctly pronounced, is Europe is concerned about good taste. And America is simply interested in what tastes good. I know it sounds the same, but it's not. Which is why American culture continues to dominate the planet.
Right, right. Well, I think it's just fascinating. I think we've given our viewers and listeners a different side of you today that I don't think people see. And I'm fascinated by it as your friend.
Matter. It doesn't matter to me what legacy means or whether people understand me or not. I'm just thrilled and I appreciate Americans allowing me to live in this country, because America has given me riches and rewards beyond anything I could or anyone could ever expect anywhere else in the world. By the way, there's a profound and amazing thing about America, and that is I would understand it if I came to America, the first generation, from someplace else, and it could be from anywhere. I would understand and agree with the idea that somebody would step forward and say, well, there's an opportunity for a good job, and my family has been here for 5 generations. I should be ahead of the line. The astonishing thing about America is that even I, a first generation foreigner, legal immigrant, could go right to the head of the line based on my talent,
Hmm.
not on my lineage.
Right.
Whereas in Europe, it has to do with lineage.
Right. Well, most of the world, a lot of the world leaders are the sons and grandsons or kids and grandkids of previous leaders.
Right,
Very common in Japan that a prime minister is the grandson of a former prime minister. This
right.
is an unusual place, whether it's Barack Obama, Ronald Reagan, Jimmy Carter, Gerald Ford, Richard Nixon. These are all people that came from basically nowhere and often sometimes didn't have fathers like Bill Clinton and Barack Obama had an absent father.
Yep, yep.
So this is the remarkable thing about America that we forget when you grow up here. All this, it's like fish in water. You don't know you're in water. You don't know how remarkable this is, right? Unless you come from the outside like you and I did.
Absolutely true. So when I meet, uh, well, sometimes when I get angry, um, I resort to expletives. I shouldn't, because there are good people on all sides of the political spectrum. But when there's a delusional, extreme, woke asshole, sometimes I get hot under the collars, which is to say, you have no idea your delusional, entitled notion of where you are. Because if you were born in a different century and a different generation, the way my mother was born in Hungary before the Nazis came into power. And by the time she was 14 years of age, just because she was Jewish, she was in a concentration camp. And our entire family, my mother's mother, her grandfather, her brothers, everybody was killed violently and starved and beaten in the gas chambers of Nazi Germany. Whereas if you were born in America and lived here for generations, you have no idea how violent the rest of the world is. So when I meet people who believe they're entitled, I have a right. I have a right to universal health care. Says who? I have the right to a weekly check from the government when I don't do this. And I said, why? In the rest of the world, you only get paid if you work. So I'm the last guy in the world you're going to go to and cry crocodile tears. I don't want to loan you money. I never want to loan anyone any money. How much do you need? I need $1,000. Tell you what you do. You come and clean up the garbage in my properties, and you go do this and you go do that, and I'll give you the money. That way you'll never have to say thank you, because you earned it.
Right.
And that way I'll never have to go after the loan, which you will never repay. By the sweat of thy brow, in the good book that my people wrote and gave the rest of the world.
Sounds very biblical. Well, listen, before we wrap up, let's make a little news. What do you think about this idea of making the Gaza Strip the Riviera?
Well, you can't make Gaza Strip or no matter how good natured Mr. Trump is, and I knew the gentleman before he became political, is that the actual population itself has got to have a say in it. Now, I'll grant you that the Iran-backed folks who came in there were duly elected, by the way, by the Gazans themselves. So the way you have political problems is if the population voted in, quote, the bad guys, then, that's a problem. But even after we beat the pants off of Japan and Germany and wanted to rebuild, we actually sent money and, the Marshall Plan and on, ad infinitum ad nauseum. But Americans, I have to say, it's one of the amazing things about us as opposed to Russia is we didn't come over and say, okay, now Germany is part of us. Because the German population has got to have a say. It's their land in their own future. So I understand the idea that Mr. Trump, and I've met Bibi, I think they both want to make the area safe for mothers to have their children, because it doesn't matter what your political persuasion is or what side of the fence you're on. If you lose your child, no matter what side of the fence you're on, it hurts the same for mothers. So I think at the core of it, when they say we want to make it the Riviera of the Middle East, that's fine. But then you get into the minutia, which is the people still have to have a say in it. You can't just have a foreign power, and in this case, we are saying, okay, this is no longer your land. We're going to be in charge and do that. I think the motivation is based on goodness. There ain't no oil fields. We're not going over there to take over the stuff. It's a small tract of land that was handed over to the Palestinians by the Israelis, who said, here, this is you get to decide everything. And the Israelis pulled out. Didn't turn out so well. And so I believe the answer is generational. I don't think it's going to happen with this generation in the same way that after World War II, and even after the Korean conflict, you wouldn't expect the people that were involved in the war to have answers on what to do. So Germany and Japan became very free thinking and democratic and capitalist, by the way, because when you've got a democracy without capitalism, you got a problem. I strongly believe I'm an unabashed, unapologetic capitalist. Pig, you say? Fine. But it's the only system I know that hasn't failed. Communism has failed, also invented by a Jew. It doesn't work. It simply doesn't work because of the nature of man. A classless society is based on the premise that, nobody's selfish. Unfortunately, that's not the case. Human beings, even a classless society, want more. I want to have more than you do. Yeah, that's called capitalism. If I work harder, I'll make more, and so on. So at the end of the day, Japan and Germany are now our closest allies. 7 years ago, we were dropping bombs all over, including nuclear weapons on Japan. And as far as I'm concerned, rightfully so.
Fat man and little boy.
This is going to get me in trouble, but I stand by my words. Otherwise, you'd have to go fighting door to door and lose 2 million Americans, or so they say. No, I don't.
Let me just push back a tiny bit. Why didn't we, I didn't expect to do this, why didn't we drop a bomb on a military base in Japan, kill a bunch of troops, and then say, next is a city unless you stop? Why did we go straight for the women and children? That's the only part that I'm not crazy about.
I don't know the answer to that. America also, by the way, firebombed Dresden for
Right.
140,000 or something men, women, and children. These are not bombs that necessarily just destroyed buildings. They would go off before you hit the ground, and fire would go off.
Right.
War is hell.
Yeah.
It's impossible to have a war without innocent people dying. I don't know the answer.
But I think what makes America different from other countries is that they're accidental. We accidentally kill women and children. We don't really target them. That's what I like to think anyway.
Well,
I've always,
I
yeah,
tend to think sometimes it's on purpose. Sometimes you want to spread terror. I'm
yeah,
sorry, that's the nature of war. But after we beat the pants off of a country, we don't take it over.
right. We give it back to them.
Not only that, but we give you money to build up your own structure.
When in the history, it's a remarkable thing in the history of the world, right? What America did in giving back. For instance, Okinawa. We took over Okinawa for 20, 25 years, and then we said, here you go, back to you. It's really in human history, I think it's
Russia
unprecedented.
didn't do that. Japan
Right,
didn't do that. Germany didn't do that. You know, the original colonial powers would
right.
take over countries and rule them. They would be your property. America's never done that.
And you take their stuff, you take their minerals, take their gold, take everything. So I think it's good for especially young people to hear this from you, from your perspective, because it is. I often tell my kids, you're growing up in a candy store and you don't realize it's a candy store. You think this is normal. This is not normal. In the course of human history, this
The
is a
more
very
lack
unusual
of
thing.
knowledge, you know, when I was much younger, I didn't know stuff. I was much more, quote, liberal, sort of delusionally liberal in the sense that everybody's equal. That's a beautiful romantic phrase. But as you learn what Mother Nature is all about, you actually learn that it is decidedly the opposite. No one is equal, everybody is unequal.
Hmm.
Some are just taller by an accident of birth.
Right.
And no matter how, no, we're equal. Nope. See that guy next to me? He's going to run faster than you are. He's not equal to you, he's superior to you. And some people are smarter than you will ever be because of their DNA. We're all equal is a beautiful romantic notion, but the actual truth is we are all unequal.
Yeah.
That's the truth. Should we all have access to the same stuff? No, because not everybody's talent and work ethic is on the same level.
Hmm.
So should Einstein, and respectfully, and I admire the guy and I like him a lot, my gardener have the same amount of money or recognition? No. He's Einstein, and just because of the peculiarities of his brain or the accident of nature, he's an absolute genius and changed life as we know it on the face of the planet. Does that mean I like my gardener any less? No, I actually respect him, but they're not equal. And they will never be because of their DNA starting off. And then after that, you're born with, you know, these marbles that you have, but it's also what you do with them.
Hmm.
And some of the richest people in the world are not the smartest. And there are geniuses who still live in their mother's basement.
Another side of Gene Simmons. Gene, it's been great to have you today. I think our listeners and viewers have gotten, as I said, a different side of you.
I can't wait for the hate mail.
I don't think there'll be hate mail. I think it's just
Well,
fascinating.
it doesn't matter. Not everybody likes Jesus either.
Well, thanks again for stopping by, and we're looking forward to seeing the second movie. What is the title again? Not the shark one, but the other one. What's your title, Gene? Come on.
Go to genesimmons.com.
Oh, go to genesimmons.com. Find the tour.
It's called The Canyon.
Find the movies.
Bella Thorne is our star. Mel Gibson up there. It's a really good movie.
I can't wait to see it and catch you on tour as well. So thanks for dropping by.
All the best.